Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Grayboardgamer here with the second game in my small box playthrough series, Deep Space D-6 from Tau Leader Games. Before I crack the box open and get it set up, I'd like to mention that the Kickstarter is currently live at the time of this filming and is going to be running until June 20th of 2017 for the next printing of this game. So you can get it right now on Kickstarter. With that said, let's get this box open and get it set up. The game that I have comes with 4 different ships to play the game with. The Halcyon, the AG-8, Mono Nowhere, and the Athena Mark II. For this first playthrough I'm going to use the Halcyon, and the game plays fairly quickly, so as long as this doesn't take me longer than I expect it to, I'll definitely grab another one of these ships and do another playthrough to show you more than one ship for this part of the series. Now that we have our ship chosen, and again I'm using the Halcyon for this playthrough, next we place the infirmary card next to the ship, and there are 2 sides to this card. We have the one that you're looking at right here, and then on the back side, an optional rule to use: during the assigned phase you may send a unit to the infirmary to change another available unit to any face. And that is the side that I'm going to use for this playthrough. I want to have that extra option as part of it. Next we'll place the hull and shield trackers. And you have this, well, these both. You have a gray cube and a greenish cube that help you keep track of the status of your hull. And they both start at their highest number. On this ship, the hull starts at 8 and the shields start at 4. Next we will have the threat cards that have this triangle symbol with the exclamation point in them. And these are all the threats that we're going to encounter during the playthrough of the game. And I'll explain the symbols and what's going on as we do the playthrough. But this deck will get shuffled and placed up here as a draw deck. And the game comes with 6 of these Don't Panic cards. And depending on how you want to set the difficulty level of the game, and I'm going to play this at a middle or a medium level. There's an easy, a medium, and a hard. You take all 6 of these Don't Panic cards and shuffle them into the threat deck for easy, or you remove 3 and only shuffle 3 in for a medium, which is what I did. Or if you want to be hard, then you would take and just place 1. And there's also cards, 6 of them, that have this symbol in the bottom corner. And these are the Ouroboros cards. And these are like a boss battle that comes at the end of the game. And you can do it one of 2 ways. You can either take these out, set them off to the side, and then they would come into play once this deck is exhausted. Or you can take the 6 of them, shuffle them into that deck, and then as you're drawing your threat cards throughout the game, when you get one of those cards with the Ouroboros symbol on it, you would put it off to the side and then just draw another threat card. And then once you had all 6 of them drawn, then they would immediately come into play whether this deck was completely exhausted or not. The threat deck is shuffled and ready to go, and again I'm playing this on a medium difficulty, so I've included 3 of the Don't Panic cards in the deck, and the Ouroboros cards. This has nothing to do with the difficulty level, but I've chosen to put them off to the side, and then I'll bring them into play after the threat deck is exhausted, and that represents the big capital ship that comes at the end. So once all these threats are exhausted, then the big capital ship, the Ouroboros, will come into play, and that'll be the last thing we have to defeat in order to get a win. Before you start, you draw 2 threat cards. And our first one is a Corsair, and it has 2 health to start out with. And then the 4, 5, and the 6, during the threat phase, if we roll one of those numbers, then this occurs, which would be -2 to our hull. And what you do is it has a health of 2, so you put it next to the spot here to show that that's where it starts, of course. But if it takes, say, 1 damage, it would move down here. So this 4, 3, 2, 1 that you see on the side of the board is what the current health of these threats is at the time. It starts out at 2, but it could go down to 1, and then of course if it's at 0, it gets discarded. And we have to draw another threat. And this one, that's a rough one to get early. It does not have a health level, but during the threat phase, if we roll a 2, we'll take a big hit of -5 to the hull, and then we'll discard this card. So for now, I'll just put it down here at the 1. It doesn't go away or take damage, but I'll keep it over there on the right side for us to keep track of. Other than that, the setup is complete. There are 6 dice, 6 custom dice, and then 1 regular 6-sided die. Let me zoom in on those and I'll just tell you briefly what those symbols are called. Again, we have a normal 6-sided die that comes with the game that is rolled during the threat phase. Then we get the 6 different faces. Each die has one of these symbols on each face, so there's an equal chance for them to be rolled. And you'll hear me referring to them by their name instead of just saying, hey, the blue one or the green one and so forth. I'll refer to them as what they're called in the instruction book. We have the commander die, science, engineering, tactical, medical, and threat detected. The object of the game is to exhaust this deck and then defeat the Ouroboros when it comes. There's a constant flow of threats coming from this deck that are over here that you have to manage, and that's the trick of the game, is to manage these effectively and not lose your hull of your ship, because there's a couple ways you can lose. Either your hull, which is the gray, reaches 0, and there's a hull breach, ship's gone, end of the game. Or at any time, if all 6 of your crew, which is what these dice represent, the different crew, are locked up and you cannot roll during the very first part of each round, which is the roll your available crew dice. If you have no crew dice to roll for any reason, again, the crew is incapacitated and you've lost the game. We are ready to start. And the different symbols and different abilities of this ship, I'll explain them as I always do during the gameplay instead of just front-loading the video with a whole bunch of instructions that I'm going to explain again anyway. The first thing you do is you roll your available crew dice. Right now, all 6 of them are available. And we got 1 of the threat detected. Whenever those come up, they immediately get placed here. And if you get 3 of them, you get an additional threat that comes up. We have 2 medical, a tactical, a commander, and a science. Early on here, when I'm explaining the different aspects of the game, I'll zoom in like this so you can get a better look at what's going on. And I don't want 3 of these to appear up here because, again, it's going to give me another threat that's going to appear. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my medical dice and place it here where it says return all units from the infirmary. Well, there are no units in the infirmary, so I don't need to use it for that. Or return a threat die. So I'll assign that crew member there. Then this threat die will get over here to the returned, which means I'm able to roll it again when I roll the crew dice. Now I have a couple choices. I can... Really, this one is not going to do me much good outright, but it's going to do me good in a roundabout way. And what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to assign a crew die, and it says change a crew die to any face. I mean, I'm going to assign a commander die, and I can change another die to any face. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this medical to a tactical, so I have 2 of them now. And then I'm going to place both of them here and fire my lasers. The first one does 1 damage and then +2 for each additional used. So that's a total of 3 damage, and that is enough to take care of the Corsair, which only has a health of 2. So it is discarded, so I don't have to worry about taking any hull damage from it during the threat phase. And then I have this final science available. And the way this works is I can recharge my shields, but they're fully charged, or I can turn it into a stasis beam. What that means is any external threat, and these ones with the triangles on them are the external threats. If you see a square, it would be an internal threat, and I just place it over here. I can do a stasis beam where I take the science die, place it on the card, and then that external threat cannot activate during the threat phase. But in this case, I don't want to do that, because this is going to happen sometime. Sometime I'm going to roll a 2, and I'm going to take 5 damage to my hull. And if that's going to happen, I want it to happen when I'm full, and then that will give me a chance to repair it later. Because the way you take damage, unless the card specifies otherwise, first damage is assigned to your shield and then the hull. So if I were to take 5, I would take 4 to the shield and only 1 to the hull, and then through other rounds I can repair my hull or recharge my shields. But I don't want this to happen when my hull's sitting at 4 and I have no shield later on in the game when things are getting crazy, and then I end up losing just because of that. So I'm not going to use that right now and go ahead and maybe it'll happen, and that's okay. Since it's going to happen, I want it to happen when I'm ready for it. Now all my crew have been assigned. One that hasn't been assigned, but that's okay. And the next thing we would do is we draw a new threat. And this is an internal threat. You can see with the red square, and it's invaders. If I roll a 2 or a 4, I have to send a unit to the infirmary. And you can see these 2 tactical symbols on it. I can use 2, or have to use 2 tactical dice, just like the ones here, to fire the lasers, to make this card go away. And internal threats, I'll just place them over here on this side so we can keep track of them. The new threat has been drawn, and now we go into the threat phase, which means we roll the threat die. And we're hoping we don't get a 2 right now, or maybe I do hope and just get it over with. And we got a 4. The solar wind is not going to activate, but our invaders do. And it says we have to send a unit to the infirmary. And now there's 1 in the infirmary. And this cannot come out of here unless it is removed by a medical die or some other effect in the game. So that basically locks that die up. And that is the end of the round. Well, the end of the round is where you gather your crew. So I'd get my 5 remaining crew because I have 1 in the infirmary, and then I'd be able to start my next round by rolling the dice again. And we'll start our next round, and we'll get 1 threat detected. And then we have a commander, a science and engineering, and a medical. We've done the medical before, but this time instead of removing a threat, I'm going to get the die out of the infirmary, and it'll be returned in my next round. I don't have anything to do with the science and the engineering. I could repair the hull, but I don't have any damage to my shield or my hull, so I'll assign a commander, turn this into a tactical, and place it on the invader's card. Now it takes 2 of them to defeat it, but I can put 1 on there for now, and then hopefully roll another one and get rid of that internal threat. My crew is assigned, we will have a new threat, and it's a rescue mission, a telepath. Discard to look at the next 5 cards of the threat deck. This is a rescue mission. This is a beneficial card, and it has that health symbol. So if I put a health or a medical die on there, a medical die, then I can use that telepath ability that I rescued. We'll roll our threat and get a 1, which doesn't match anything, so no damage, none of our threats activate. And we'll gather our crew up, and we're limited to 4 now. I mean, I could remove him off the invaders, but I want to leave it on there for now. And I made a mistake. When you draw a rescue mission, you're supposed to draw another threat card right after that. And in this case, the mistake's not going to hurt us because I drew a don't panic, nothing happens. Normally, when you draw a rescue card, you draw another threat right after that, and then you would roll the threat die for the threat phase. But that card helped my mistake not be an issue. Also, in my haste, I picked up this threat detected die, and that should not have been picked up. Now we're ready to go with our 4 crew members. And bad news for us, 2 more threat detected, which will equal 3. We'll get them back later, but a new threat, and amazingly, don't panic comes up again. There's only 3 of them in there, so I'm about to be out of that kind of luck. And then we have 2 commanders, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to assign a commander, turn it into a tactical, and that'll be the 2 that we need to get rid of these invaders so they're not bothering us anymore. With the crew assigned, we get a new threat, and this time it's space pirates. And they start with a health of 2, and when they're activated, they do 2 damage to our hull. And we'll see if they activate. It is a 1. Does not match any of the threats, so again, nothing happens to us. And we'll gather our crew, and this time we do have all 6 available. And the game rounds move really fast. It's going to be a little bit slower because I like to talk about any new rules that come up and also the strategy that's going on in my brain. But we're going to roll our crew and have an absolutely horrible roll. We got 3 right there, 1 there. So we had 1 full set, which is going to add another threat. And this one is a rough one. It's an assault cruiser. And it also does 2 damage to our hull and starts at 4. And we have a commander and a medical. I want to minimize the threat, so I'm going to use my medical to take away the threat detected. The commander is not going to do much for me because I have nothing that I can change at this time. Darn it. Oh, almost got ahead of myself there. We got to draw a new threat. And oh, it's a really bad one. The flagship. It has a hull damage of 3. And it also has 4 life. Now if we roll a 4 or 5, well, if we roll a 4, 5, or 6, we're going to be taking a big hit. And we rolled a 4. That matches the assault cruiser, and that matches the flagship. And that's all. So the flagship and the assault cruiser will combine to do 5. It's going to take our shields down to 0 and do 1 damage directly to our hull. That was a rough round there. We need to do some serious laser damage or this game is going to be over fast. Medical, engineering, science, lasers, commander. Okay. Well, we're going to take our engineer and recharge our shields to help protect us as best we can. We'll have our engineer go to repair the hull, and it's 1 and then +2 for each additional one, but we only need to do 1 at this time, so our ship is completely repaired. We have nobody in the infirmary, and we have no threats detected to use these infirmary dice on. We can have the commander change one of these into a laser, and that'll give us 2 of them, not into a laser, into a tactical. Fire the lasers for a total of 3. We'll do 2 to the space pirates to take care of them, and then we'll do 1 damage to the flagship because it's the one that has 3 dice that do 3 hull damage. And with this specific ship, the Halcyon, in the rules, it actually states that the total damage may be split among multiple targets when using the lasers. Get a new threat, and it's the Nebula. This one stinks. It has a health of 2. The shields go offline immediately. Anytime we roll a 1 through 5, the Nebula loses a health, and when the Nebula disappears, then the shields come back online. But for now, our shields are offline. Thanks to the interference of this nebula we're flying through, it's messing us up. So we could take a really devastating hit now. We have no shields to protect us. Right now would be a great time for a 1 or a 3. Not a 4. 4 is definitely not what I wanted. That will cause the nebula to lose a health. But it's going to hit our ship twice. From the assault cruiser and a flagship for a total of 5, taking our hull all the way down to 3. Now we need some serious repairs on our ship. We're in a lot of trouble here. Get our crew together and hope for a really great roll. A couple of engineers, a couple of lasers. Not what I got at all. But I got a couple of commanders, so we can do some... We can change some things up here. And this didn't turn out as bad as it looked initially. So I will take the commander, change this medical to a laser. Now give us 3 lasers that we can fire. The flagship was at 3 health. We get that big boy out of there. That thing was rough. Grab another commander. And what do I want to do with him? I can't recharge the shields because they're offline. I will turn it into an engineer and use it as a stasis beam to lock down that assault cruiser so it cannot do any damage during the threat phase. We'll grab a new threat, and it is a strike bomber. 1 damage to the hull, and then whenever it hits, it sends a unit to the infirmary. Anything but a 2 or a 4. A 1, that will work. Because what happens is this nebula will take another hit, and it is gone. Our shields are activated again, but they start off at 0. A 2 would have outright killed us because the solar winds would have done 5 to the hull, plus the strike bomber did 1 for 6, and we only had 3 hull left. So we made it out of that one, just barely. Get the crew together. Hopefully get an engineer. We need to get those shields recharged. We need to do some hull repair. We got a couple of engineers, so that's good. We got a laser, we got a commander. Alright, that was a pretty good roll. What we will do first is we'll have the engineer bring these shields back online. I'm sorry, have the scientist bring the shields back online. And then I'll use the commander to bring up some lasers, some tactical people to fire the lasers for a total of 3. I'll assign 2 to the strike bomber and 1 to the assault cruiser. Then I'll fire off the stasis beam to lock that assault cruiser down again. And we have another strike bomber that shows up. We already know what they do. And it is a 1. Nothing has a 1 on it. We are okay for now. Get everybody together. We got a lot of threat deck to go through still. I hope we got another threat detected. Got a little bit of everything here. Where do we want to start out? Well, our shields are up. We definitely want to do some hull repair. If I fire the lasers, they're only going to do 1 unless I change it. Do I want to do that? Do I want to change this to a laser, do 3? I could take out the assault cruiser. Yeah, let's do that. Let's get that double damage to the hull out of there. Fire the lasers, do 3. End the reign of this assault cruiser. Get that thing out of there. And now we have an orbital cannon. -2 to the hull, cannot be damaged unless it's the only threat. And it starts with a health of 1. Now the orbital cannon, we can't do that unless it's the only threat. This rescue isn't a threat, but these 2 are. So I have to get the solar winds out of there before I can even mess with the orbital cannon. All right, let's see what we have happen to us. And it's a 3. The strike bomber hits our hull for 1. But we have shields ready for it. And then we have to send a unit to the infirmary. So we're down to 3 units now. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to click on these links and consider supporting the channel through Patreon. If you'd like to make a one-time donation, the link to my GoFundMe page for equipment upgrades is in the video description below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and check out the other videos on the channel. Your support is appreciated, and I'll see you in my next video.